CCI Big 4 pistol shot shells. So we have our 38 special and our 44 special. And normally these pistol shot shells come in smaller shots, but these are our Big 4. And what that means is those are number 4 shot shells, number 4 pellets. So essentially what those are like a 0.13 diameter BB. So a little bit smaller than your typical BB gun you might have grown up as a kid with, because those are 0.177, so 0.13 size diameter shot. And these normally come in like a number 9 shot, a much smaller, finer pellet. But these are really marketed as like snake shot, rat shot. But what I want to do today is kind of test them as, you know, personal defense rounds. How would they actually perform as a personal defense round? So I'm going to use my 4-inch Smith & Wesson revolvers, my 4-inch Smith & Wesson 686, and my Model 69 to test these. And I did bring out some rats. You know, I don't have actual ballistic rats, but you know, these will do as my rats. I got a couple rats here. We'll see how those do. I'm going to do my normal ballistic test, kind of, sort of. I'm not going to go through the chronograph because there's a good chance that even if I don't hit the chronograph with those pellets, that cup that holds that in place might hit it and kind of not do good. But what I'm going to do here is 3 inches of clear ballistics. Then after that, I'm going to have a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, and more clear ballistics. I'm going to go right into that at close range and see how deep those will go, see if they'll actually go through the rib simulation. And then I am going to do a test where I'm going to be back from 7 yards, and I want to see how these pattern from 7 yards. But what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to put up some ballistics gel, some clear ballistics. So I have these 2-inch thick pieces here that I melted down, and I'll put it right in front of that target there, and we can kind of see what they'll pattern like and how deep they'll go, if they'll go through that 2 inches at 7 yards. That's really what I'm curious about. So very interesting, different test for me, but you know, I've been curious about these Big 4s for a long time. So let's see how they do. Let's get started with this test. All right, so we're going to do our plain clear ballistics shot, 3 inches of clear ballistics, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, and then more clear ballistics. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous about doing this, but you know, I would say don't try this at home. I'm what you would call a self-proclaimed internet expert, and I know the risks here, but the biggest risk is that cup kind of breaking off and coming back and hitting me. But we'll see what we get here. 38 special. Right. I didn't get hit by anything, but there are pellets just kind of sitting there. So let's go take a look. All right, so only a couple of those pellets went through there from the 38 special. It did do a lot of damage to this right here. And when we hit our rib simulation, I am quite surprised because most of these kind of went through it. It really peppered that thing and went through, and a couple of them went through, and we have several of them just kind of sitting here. Very, very deformed after hitting that MDF. So very, very interesting how well those did. Because that would cause a ton of pain. Now, would this be lethal? Unlikely. Let's see how our 44 special does. It's supposed to be going the same velocity, but has a heavier payload. So let's see how that compares. All right, we have our 44 special version now. Instead of 84 grains, we have 110 grains of these. It's supposed to be going 1,000 feet per second like the 38 special. So just a little bit more weight here. Ideally, I should have brought another first 3-inch piece of this here because I'm going to be shooting through the same gel, but I did put up a new MDF piece. So let's see how our 44 special does. All right, I got hit with some stuff. I think it was just the plastic cup coming back. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so none of these went through, and they're all laying right here. And I was probably hit with a few of these, but they all flattened. You know, they're not steel or anything. They just kind of flatten out. So they're not gonna like ricochet very, very easily. And none of them made it through the MDF. However, it does look to me like it created more damage through that MDF. So that's very, very interesting. So let me shoot our 7-yard target and see how these pattern and how far they would go in some gel at 7 yards. All right, 7 yards from the target. So I'm actually gonna fire, let me fire like 3 of them at that with each caliber, and then put up a new piece of gel and just kind of see how these things will do. So here's our 38 special. 7 yards, ballistics gel, and a target there. All right, let's go take a look at that. All right, so here's a close-up at this, look at this target here. Here's the wad actually embedded into that gel at 7 yards. And it does look like, with the 38 special, most of those went through. Most of those went right through this and through this target. Now we have an empty box here. And some of them, I put some ballistics gel up there just to hold this box down. And the ones that went through there, it's hard to see through this top, but actually they went through, this one went through like 4 inches into it. The rest of these are like an inch into there. And it looks like they just simply came out the back too, even the ones that went through the ballistics gel. I mean, there is less holes right here where that gel would be, but it does look like these are lined up with, you know, where that gel was. So I think it went through that gel and then through that, because, you know, some of these here are almost coming out the back. So, you know, it doesn't look impressive at first, but then when I look at, they went all the way through that, that means that they had probably about the same penetration that they would have up close where I was shooting at, where they were going to go through, they would go through a good amount of flesh. They would probably hit the ribs on whoever was attacking and not feel too good. So let me put up the 44 and see how that compares, or put up a new one of these and shoot with the 44 and see how that compares. All right, we have our 44 special. Quite a bit of extra pellets in there. Let's see how this does when I hit it a few times. All right, so something locked up. Yeah. Came out. Started to come out. Which, that's not good. Because it completely locked up my revolver. I was able to push that back in, but one more here. Let's go take a look at that. All right, so on that last shot, I hit that with the wad again, busted that up. But yeah, it does look very similar. Similar spread. I'm not really seeing anything that looks significantly different with this. I impacted that up there a lot more times, and they went about the same depth, because they are going about the same velocity. So there's nothing really here that impressive that I'm seeing. It seemed like the 44 hit everything harder, obviously, but yeah, that shot shell coming apart, that's a complete failure of that. That would not be a good thing to happen if you really needed that, if a rattlesnake was coming at you, or if you're using this as sort of a semi less than lethal cartridge. I know some people do stuff like that. They're like really scared that they're gonna somebody that's trying to kill them, and they'll use something like this. I wouldn't suggest that, using something like this, because it's not particularly effective. But yeah, if they needed it, it wouldn't be there for them, because it might pull out and do that. So let's put up our rat targets and see how those will do. All right, let's hit our rats. But before we do that, I want to show something here. I looked at all the 38 special cartridges, and they were totally fine as far as these capsules staying in place. But the last cartridge here and the 44 was pulled out. And in addition to that, I went to load another one, and my hand barely touched this. One that wasn't fired just came right out of the box, and capsule completely fell out, and all the shot spilled. So that's not good. Why is, this Model 69 is actually a heavy revolver relatively, so that's not good. But let's see what we get here with our big 4. We are really close to this, probably 3 to 4 yards. Let's see what we get here with our 38 special version. Didn't do as much as I thought it was going to do. Well, eventually it took effect, but it took quite a few shots. Let's try our 44. All right, our 44, and I am not confident in these because, just firing a couple shots will pull these out and prevent rotation of those remaining shots, and could also reduce pressure and cause some issues like that. But we'll see what we get with our 44 versus our rat target. All right, so we didn't see any really improved performance with our 44 versus our 38, and my guess with what's going on here with this poor quality of this ammo is probably what's happening is CCI is probably loading up a lot of that 38, and the 38 works fine, and they're really used to loading that, putting the correct crimp on those capsules, and there's a lot less recoil with 38 special. Therefore, none of these problems come into play, and then they go to load some 44, which they're probably doing less often, and they're not finding a way to get those sealed in there properly. So really a big fail on that 44, because I'm not really seeing a whole lot better performance with the 44 version than what I'm seeing with the 38 special version, because I'm thinking we're probably losing some pressure. We're probably actually shooting slower with that 44 than that 38 special. So very interesting stuff here. I was curious about this for a long time, so I am glad that I tested it, but big fail on that 44 big 4. But on the 38 special, does pretty good. So I'm not really seeing a huge increase of effectiveness versus the number 9 shot, but just a little bit of an increase in effectiveness. What I can say is if you did use it for self-defense and you did shoot, an attacker from, a couple feet away, it probably would make them want to stop, because it would completely destroy, a muscle or something, and probably start chipping ribs, and might actually go through ribs and hit something vital. But more than likely, it's not going to be super lethal. So yeah, stick to using this stuff as snake shot or rat shot. I would not use it for defense. I would not use it for deterrence, because there's just not enough there, not enough going on. So interesting test. I'm glad I did it anyway. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.